Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This big show where we talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Bosch Legacy Season 2, Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we meet, James Lafferty. He is Doc Weiler's lawyer. So all of this was an orchestrated plan. He specifically took Maddie because I was wondering what his main motivation was. I'd run through theories maybe it's his, because obviously he kept tabs with her just because the fact is he knew she was investigating, his crimes. But he specifically took her because he knew, they had the luchador mask and they had a single print or a partial print that he's it's only a matter of time before it fully connects back to me. I'm on the full suspect list. So he made a retroactive move. He kidnapped Maddie. Now, I'm assuming, because he did research on Maddie, so I'm assuming he found out right. Her dad's Harry Bosch. He's a pretty big and well-renowned homicide detective, so most likely it's she's a legacy, so she goes missing, and if I kidnap her, it matter if any cop, that's why I'm curious, is it purely hey, she just happens to be working the investigation, so it worked out for you, but you also probably did your research knowing she'd make an even better target, because you'd have easier access to her, because already know, you're familiar enough with her because of the investigation, but also it's just now looking into her, all right, her dad is this particular person, so the cops will go even above and beyond, not only because it's one of their own, but also she's a legacy, and he knows her dad will probably go above and beyond, so that's what this all was. It was a calculated plan of hey, I'm going to get caught eventually, so I might as well strike while the iron's hot, because he even says it later on when he's talking to Jerry. It's yeah, I'd rather go to jail for kidnapping than rather be a sex offender, because obviously sex offenders are the lowest piece of craps in the criminal system when it comes to jail. Specifically, child predators, they get it the roughest, deservedly so. But I don't know if all sex offenders get, child predators are the ones who get it the worst, but I don't know if that applies to all abusers in that same vein of if you're just a rapist, do you suffer the same ramifications? Because he specifically was I don't want to go to prison as a sex offender. So it's he probably would have suffered more of a ramification for that. It's plus the sentencing for it is probably way heavier, especially for the 4 counts of assault, sexual assault would be obviously minimum to the 8 years, would be way more than the 8 years he would get for kidnapping. So that's why he's hedging his bets on all of this. And the thing is, he acts he's so smart, he's so smug about it. You're just man, you knew it wasn't the right thing to do when Harry goes in there trying to threaten him. It's because of course Harry is going to devise a way to get into that room with him one way or another. Now, whether that was 100%, Harry had it planned out. He was cool, calm, and collected. It's no, push come to shove, Harry would have stabbed the pin in his eye. Yes, he doesn't always fully cross the line, but this is Maddie we're talking about. It's his daughter. It's his only family left, the last person in this world. He cares about people, but this is the last person that's his heart and soul. So, he'll do anything for her. So, I even love Jerry covering for him what? Harry being here? Nah, must be off his meds or whatever. I figure Mank would be a little bit more on board with that, so he probably read a little bit of what Jerry was saying and putting down. It's oh yeah, whatever. It's who brought you in here? Was it, you're saying it was Bosch? He was no, but he was trying to kill me. All right, come on, shut up. So... Because Harry just being so slummy, being oh yeah, it's Detective Danston, you need to move him back to interrogation so we can swap him. Well, I'll run it up there. It's no, I already did it. Now, if you want to waste time, I'm going to have to put it in my report. It's yes, sir. And it's come on, Harry. I mean, as long as it doesn't get traced back to you, but that guy's probably going to suffer some ramifications for that because of you. So, that sucks. But we'll see how that plays out. But also, turns out Doc Weiler also, his version of proof of life is that there was a video feed that automatically activated. Because we saw it when Maddie was in the call, where she's buried. You notice that there's a camera. I'm is he keeping an eye on her? And immediately I was well, we know he's being interrogated. So I was does he have a partner? The fact is, because they were oh, how is he live feeding all of this? It's it could have been an automatic system, but maybe to me, he doesn't seem like he's that tech savvy. But hey, that's me underestimating him. I think he has a partner in this, maybe one or two, but I think because later on, Harry and Chandler find the computer, and obviously if it's locked up and stuff, but I'm like, I bet you someone was there up to a certain point, but hey, maybe that could have just all been him. He just set that up automatically, but the timing was too perfect, and for it to, but like I said, it's just an automatic system to be able to send out not only the news, but also to all these different outlets, because they wanted to try and put pressure on the police. It's like, oh my God, like this is because you put a face to it of like, oh my God, not only is it a cop, you actually personalize her being like, oh, it's Madeline Bosch. The fact of the matter is she's being held captive, and it makes people more sympathetic. And it's like, whoa, the cop's really just going to let this girl die? Like putting a little more pressure on the prosecutor to accept the deal. That it's like, yeah, as I thought last episode, it is purely, hey, I'm a try and get immunity for the crimes I committed, and only go down for the kidnapping at best. That's as much as he was willing to kind of sway on this. And it is that thing with lawyers where it's just like, Rafferty, it's like, I don't blame you. It is the thing, it is that thing, Harry's whole thing is, if everyone matters or no one matters. Once again, the law is not always equal. It's supposed to be, but it's not. In a perfect utopian world, it would be perfect, and everything would be even scale. Like everything would be fair across the board. I'm an idealistic, naive person. I'm not that idealistic to believe that the court system is 100% fair. But it is a thing of, when it comes to this, lawyers do have to represent, like, even the scum of the earth. Everyone knows he's guilty of sin. Everyone knows that, but he still deserves proper representation. So as his lawyer, Lafferty's like, I legitimately have to do it. I am bound to like give him the best defense possible, even though I know he's guilty of sin, but I still have to do it because it's my job. Because they do look into it later on. It's like, why Lafferty in particular? He's not even from the same county. He's from like Kern County. It's like, why would he come all the way here to take this job on specifically? And it turns out he worked it was something child related law stuff that he did. And it's like, he hadn't like worked in over like a decade. So it's like, what is that all about? Why are you going out of your way? And it turns out that he has a family connection. Turns out, Doc Waller isn't even his real name. Well, his name changed, because he got adopted by the Doc Wallers. Turns out they were also part of, now I don't know if it's his biological mom or whatever that was part of the cult, or was it the Doc Wallers that were part of the cult, but it was part of this cult from like 20 years ago or something like that, and there was abuse and stuff going on. So it's like, I mean, typically that's not always the case, but I think you can sometimes draw that line of, okay, if someone's an abuser or it typically means, not once again typically, I'm sure there's a more specific statistic for it, but you can sometimes surmise like it was most likely done to them, and that's why they do it onto someone else. They kind of repeat the trauma. Someone who was abused will most likely abuse someone else. Just kind of in the same vein. It's not I'm not trying to equate bullying and like sexual assault, but I'm just saying it's that same mentality of, if you are bullied, you're more likely to become a bully yourself. It is that situation. So I wasn't expecting the cult angle. So the moment that popped up, I was like, okay, so I'm assuming that's going to be a bigger part of this story in some shape or form. Like I said, I'm still under the belief he probably had a partner in all of this, but because it's like, did he really do all this by himself? Like I said, I might be underestimating how much of the duplicitous piece of shit he is, but but I just the entire episode, I was like, he's got to have a partner or something, right? Because his whole thing isn't to kill Maddie. He needs her alive because she is his insurance policy. So he left her some water. He rigged it so that, yes, she'll get enough air because there's a pipe we find out later on she's in a coffin like that, or a box rather, and there's a pipe leading to make sure she gets enough air. Sadly, a scorpion, which I was like, of course that makes sense because the opening showed that scorpion. You focus on him. I thought it was like, okay, I thought that was just kind of scenery flavor, just like showcasing the scenery of like, okay, this is the desert area she's buried in, and here's a scorpion. So I know it has significance because it comes down the pipe, and I was like, that would suck. Because I don't know how poisonous scorpions are. Like, it might be a snake thing. Like, some are more venomous than others, and some aren't venomous at all. I mean, it might be thinking about spiders. I don't know if all snakes are venomous. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm pretty sure there are poisonous scorpions. I think there's some that aren't. But I was like, that would suck if she gets stung, because it's like, well, she's already in a situation where She's already dehydrated. She's trying to take small sips. I'm sure the heat and the claustrophobia. Once again, it is that thing of like your heart is racing faster. And she did at the very beginning of the episode. She took a beat back. She stopped. She's like, took a breath. She knew like, all right, I got to conserve my oxygen. The more I'm panicking, the more oxygen I'm eating up. So she does have the training to know like, all right, I got to clear my head. And she calmed down. There was one point she was touching her chest because I think that at that point, like, her air was starting to run down and her heartbeat was probably slowing down, and she was just kind of like starting to like run low on air. I mean, because now the coffin, it's not just about air anymore. It's about the coffin filling up with carbon monoxide, and it's not getting replaced with enough oxygen to compensate, especially later on, because when she ended up killing the scorpion, the pipe fell down lower, so there's less air getting there, and it's just filling up more and more with carbon dioxide. So... But like I said, my point was also like, right, with just the air situation being what it is, if she got stung too, that will most likely expedite anything. So I didn't see what it is that she bit, but I can only assume because she got like a piece of like wire or steel or something to unlock her handcuffs. I was like, most likely, and the way, because it seemed like she was biting from her shirt, so I'm assuming like, oh, it must be like the wiring to her bra or something. Only thing I could think of she could have been pulling from, but maybe I'm mistaken. But got the handcuffs off, and as she was kind of drifting in and out, she was, focusing on little details. She saw that she was in the desert. She saw like a fighter jet go over. So she took her cuff and like she scratched it into the wood beside her, just in the right angle so that the camera could catch it, which is like, right. Because she also made double sure, like, all right, this is in the view of the camera. And luckily it worked out because because the person who noticed it, because initially Mo saw her turned over, thought like, oh, she's crying. But it's like Vasquez, who didn't want to just sit around doing nothing. It's like, you're right, she's under my watch. I feel more responsible for her, so I got to do something. So she went there to try and help out, and she saw like, wait, she's not. She's getting work, and Harry figured out what it was. And it's like, considering like the location, they roughly knew in some general area of where she would have been. It's like, all right, it narrowed it down a little bit more, but it's still, ultimately, even with everything they ended up knowing, they ended up finding out about the cult. The cult existed in this area within that frame of like the desert and stuff like that. They were able to narrow it down to like a 3-mile radius. That's still a lot. And they were running out of time. There was not enough time to get a whole bunch of units out there to kind of help with the search. So it was mainly Chandler and Harry that were looking into it. And luckily, because Doc Waller was so overconfident, he let stuff slip because he's so narcissistic and thinking he's so great. Because at that point, he doesn't know that Harry and them know the general area of where she's at. So luckily, he didn't know. So he didn't mind. He's like, oh, I'll give you a hint. Made this whole point about she has enough air to breathe, and that made the whole hourglass conversation. And Jerry tells Bosch that, and it's like, right, she's most likely buried underground because of the little things that he said. Once again, he didn't know, but it's like his overconfidence was his undoing. So luckily, Harry and Chandler got to Maddie in time, and it's just like, oh, thank goodness. Because I was looking at the time frame, and like, I knew she was going to be okay, but I was like, interesting. So I was curious, because once again, there are 4 episodes out in total. So I was like, interesting. So I'm wondering if the first 2 episodes are going to be about this investigation, about finding Maddie, and then 3 and 4 are going to be about the trial. Maybe we'll expand upon like some of this other stuff with the cult, like where the story goes from here. Because once again, Harry's actions are probably going to jeopardize the case, him doing what he did, breaking into, because Doc Waller knows, like, oh, you were in my place. I know because I was there. Like, I was a step ahead of you. I was behind you. You didn't even notice it. Kind of almost being like, oh, you're losing a step, old man. But also, Harry tried to attack him. So I'm sure Jerry would be able to you assume there's got to be cameras in that interrogation room. There typically are. So not like Jerry ends up like deleting those, but. Because it's not set up to be used for interrogations at the time, because it was just like, oh, bring him here just so it's an easy access place to swab him. So the cameras might not be rolling all the time, so they might not have caught that. Who knows? But, just like Harry crossed the line at some point, so you're like, yeah, trial-wise, that's probably going to come back to bite them all in the ass. So. But what I think is going to be an interesting thing, and I think it's going to be a core part of Maddie's story going forward, is the trauma of what she went through. Because not only did she go through what she went through, that trauma is going to stay with you. You being kidnapped, you almost died, but also knowing, like, she probably doesn't know how spread that was. She knew it was spread enough that it's like, right, at least whoever it is watching this could get this message about what I'm writing. But other than that, like, she doesn't know how spread that is. Like, her fellow colleagues, the entire city saw live footage. So she's got to kind of carry that with her too, which is going to be rough. And I think that's going to be something she's going to have to deal with. Like, she has nothing to be ashamed of, but I think on some level I could see Maddie sadly carrying shame, believing like if I fought harder, if I did more, it's like, you put up a damn fight, you know? It ain't like you went down swinging, but that doesn't change the fact is of like, this happened to me, I almost died. Like, that is going to carry its own trauma with, and I think that's going to be probably, I don't think that's something that's going to immediately go away this season. I think that's something she's going to carry throughout this entire season and maybe even beyond. But I think, because that's going to be the really interesting thing, like, when it's all said and done. Like, because I could easily see Maddie be the type of person, because considering who her parents are, more specifically considering who her dad is, she's probably going to try and get back to work immediately, and that's a terrible, terrible idea. Most likely, they're going to have her get a psych eval beforehand, because it's like, right, to make sure you're actually mentally okay to go back to work. Like, I could see her like not going to work for a while, but still like going a little stir crazy. Like, I got to get back to work. I can't let this stop me. I'm fine. I'm good. And I could see Harry not wanting to kind of be like, hey, take it slow, but also knows like she needs this. And so finding that balance going forward that's going to be the complicated thing. So I don't see, because I know for Maddie, it's like, I don't want to back away from this because I want to be a cop. And if I back away from this, then Doc Waller wins. So I think that's going to be, once again, a part of this journey of like, probably, I'm sure like she will probably develop like, I could easily see the storyline being like her developing like either nightmares or panic attacks because of this experience. It's a panic inducing situation to be in. Like, you don't know if anyone's going to behave. You hope and pray, but you know, because even Harry was like, yeah, everyone throughout the episode is telling me to keep the faith. That's what everyone keeps saying, but you know, it's hard to be optimistic. You hope for the best, but it's also Harry's use to the worst, because once again, this is the third person in his life that's been affected by crime. You know, first his mom, then Eleanor, now this, you know, so the world's beating him down to the point that it's like, right, I want to make sure my daughter's alive. I gotta believe it. But it's still that doubt creeping in every once in a while of like, oh God, things could be bad. I mean, literally went to check and see if that was her body last episode and everything. So that pain is still there, because it's like, yeah, that might not have been your daughter, but that could be her. You could end up there in the future at some point in time if this situation had gone any other way. But like I said, luckily Maddie is okay. She was a little dehydrated. We saw her get released from the hospital and stuff. So what I thought was also interesting, because I don't think she was introduced last season. I think Sam was from like, because I saw in her, the actress who plays her name's Cora, we'll get to that in a second. I saw that she was also like, from the IMDb X-ray thing said like she was in Bosch. So I was like, because I think I vaguely remembered the dog walker. Wasn't that like in the last season she was introduced? Either way, turns out that an actress is Cora Welliver. So it's like one of Titus Welliver's daughters. I was like, oh, it's so neat. It's like, oh, his real life daughter and his TV daughter in the same scene together. It's hilarious. Once again, that probably came up beforehand, but I didn't realize that, because I vaguely feel like I remember when Sam got hired, but I don't really remember. Obviously, it's been a minute. Because I don't remember if it was the first season of Bosch Legacy or whether it was like maybe season 6, most likely season 7 of Bosch, the final season. I think there was a situation where there was a flashback to like a younger Bosch. I think it was like a teenage / young adult Bosch. And I was like, oh man, this person looks a lot like Titus. And someone was like, yeah, because that's his son. I had no idea. I don't know how many children he has. I try to not get too much in like actors' bits. It's like, yeah, even if it's known on the internet, I'd rather not dive into people's personal business unless it's like, oh, I just naturally come across the information just in pertaining to, you know, what I'm talking about. So that's the only reason why I'm referencing those particular situations. So I don't know how many sons he has or how many, based on what I was seeing like on IMDb, I think it's at least 2 daughters that I'm aware of. But either way, once again, beside the point, I just thought that was kind of a funny like thing of like, oh, TV daughter and real life daughter in the same scene together. And I think it's interesting too that the episode ends on just Maddie and being like, okay, she's good. That's all. Cause we did not, after Jerry's interrogation with, Doc Waller, like about the hourglass stuff. After that, that was the last scene we got him in the episode. So going forward, like I said, I don't know if episode 3 and 4 are going to revolve around his trial or what the story's going to be going forward. I avoided the previews exactly for that reason. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. Because I think that's so interesting. Like I said, the storyline isn't resolved because it's still going on. So like, because you'd assume that'd be the overarching story. So that's why I was wondering if like the Maddie thing would stretch out longer than it did. But it's like, makes sense that it would be resolved in like the first 2 episodes. Like I said, at least finding her. Beyond that those physical and mental scars, physical scars heal. It's the mental and emotional ones that linger and take the longest to heal. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.